You can call me whatever you like.
How about Julie?
Yeah, that's fine.
So, Julie, do you
Yeah.
give me the permission to use this interview for broadcasting and archiving purpose?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, fantastic. So, thank you. So, Julie, let's kind of go back a bit, go back, I suppose, down the memory lane and think about the earliest memory you seem to have around your childhood and what was life like then?
I don't really have very early memories of my life. I was born in the Mile End Hospital in 1968. And I think at the time, my parents were in temporary accommodation somewhere in Tower Hamlets. And then after my brother was born, which is about 18 months after me, we moved to a council flat in Globetown. And that's where I sort of grew up. I went to school there, to a local primary school. So did my brothers, and then went to the local secondary school as well.
So, do you remember what was life like around your setting whilst you were growing up?
Yes, so it was a regular council estate, so social housing. We lived in a block of flats with a lot of other working class people. It was mixed in many ways. There was not many Bengali families. I think there was only one other Bengali family on the estate at the time, and a black family. It was majority white. And there was one mixed race family. It was predominantly white, I would say.
So, how did you feel? How did it make you feel at the time? Do you remember?
It was quite an unsafe place, to be honest. The only safe place was at home for a lot of us, and even that we heard about people being attacked in their homes by racists. So it was, I would say, a climate of fear, really, for a lot of Bengalis, Bangladeshis at the time, living in places like Tower Hamlets.
So, did you experience any forms of
Yes, I
racism?
mean, there was incidents on the estate with other families, other children, other families who were racist. There were also incidents on the way to and from school, being attacked by people and their dogs. There was incidents that my father experienced, to work and on the way back, being bottled or attacked. My mum didn't really go out very much. Sometimes she would come take us to school and bring us back. But then even then, it was quite challenging. We did have some friendly neighbours, and they were quite good. One of them worked in the local school, the primary school, and sometimes we would go with her and come back with her from school because she was, I think, one of the teaching assistants there. But it wasn't a very pleasant upbringing in terms of, growing up in the local area. It was quite a hostile environment, I would say.
So, let's say growing up, what sort of changes did you notice?
There was a fight back attitude as we grew older. Young people, especially young boys, young men, decided to fight back and become much more sort of resisting the kind of racism that was going on. Because the older generation sort of tended to be, I would say, more reserved and try not to draw attention to what was happening. They understood that the police were also racist and that the housing and the council were also racist. They understood that they weren't going to get a good service from the public services. So they understood that they were being discriminated against, but they didn't feel that they could challenge them in any way. Whereas the younger generation, especially people who are born in this country, we felt that because we were born here, I suppose, we had a right to be treated fairly. And so, there was more of a resistance towards that kind of behavior and challenging the kind of racism by sort of confronting racist sort of people, but also challenging the services and the kind of treatment that we were getting from different people as well.
So, in terms of yourself, obviously, it's not just simply about young or old, but you're also a woman. So, as a
Yeah.
young woman at the time, what was life like growing up? into adulthood for you?
The primary school was quite a nice environment, to be honest. It wasn't a bad environment as such, but the secondary school was horrible. It was like a prison for young people, to be honest. It was disgusting atmosphere. Even the teachers were terrified.
Why?
Well, because they would be attacked by the kids.
Is just basically one of those dysfunctional schools. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, very much so. It was just one of these places where you just did not enjoy being. You just couldn't wait to get out of as soon as you could. For boys, it was particularly dangerous because they were physically attacked and knifed, or could be, like my brother was. And for girls, it was much more of a psychological hostile place. There was a lot of bullying and intimidation. So even if we weren't physically attacked, there was other psychological sort of treatment going on, which happened because of the gender differences. It happened in a different way. But
Mhm.
it was quite a difficult place. I mean, for most of the pupils, I would say, regardless of race, you came out of that secondary school, and most of the boys ended up in prison, and the girls ended up pregnant. That was it. That was the way we graduated from that school. There was no expectation whatsoever from anybody for us to do anything well
Okay,
at all.
so how did things evolve from then on? Did you get pregnant, or was there anything else?
No, I decided to draw a line under that experience and go to sixth form
Okay.
and do my exams there. And then from there, I went on to do A levels at college, and then went on to a polytechnic. I decided that I was going to find a way out of this poverty and deprivation by focusing on my education and looking for ways to support myself as an adult.
Okay, so you kept on doing that. So you said you studied at further education, then higher education. So what happened afterward?
Well, I got disillusioned with the degree I was doing. It was a teaching degree because while I was doing that, I saw that it was institutionalized racism that I experienced in my teaching practice.
In what way?
I saw a situation where it wasn't so much a white person being oppressive, it was an African Asian head teacher who was allowing a very sort of discriminatory situation in a school to take place. There was a clear division between the white teachers and the non-white teachers. And there was it was quite a segregated staff room. And there was this attitude towards the majority Bangladeshi pupils, children, as being, they were beneath their contempt almost. So I just decided that I wasn't going to carry on with that profession and not to be in a job where I saw, that happening really, where, children weren't getting a very good education and the staff were treated, well, the non-white staff were treated really like second-class citizens within the school. As a student teacher, I just felt that I was not really in a position to challenge this sort of discrimination, really. And also, by the time I graduated, it was the national curriculum, which what it did made me realize there was very little scope for teachers to actually teach with any autonomy. I graduated as a primary school teacher, and the school that I went to, the teachers were mavericks. They were unusual people. They didn't follow a curriculum as such. They taught in a very sort of intuitive way, in a way that sort of met the needs of the young people that they were teaching. And I felt that the national curriculum was stifling that kind of teaching experience, learning experience, and trying to force young people to study in a very narrow way and concentrate on just very basic skills like English, maths, and science, Whereas before the national curriculum, yes, there wasn't a standard of there wasn't a standard curriculum that people followed, but for me it was a much more creative experience that the teachers used, and they were able to do it in a way that met the needs of the diverse needs of the children that they were teaching. Whereas the national curriculum is based on assessing young people and getting them through, these hoops, and to make sure that they are, able to perform in tests and assessments. And I felt that there was no sort of autonomy given to teachers to teach in a way that was much more met the needs of the young people they were teaching. So after that, I decided I wasn't going to teach in schools, because I didn't think that was the right environment for me. It was just too institutionalized. I retrained to work with adults in further education to teach English as to speakers of other languages, because I thought at least with adults they can think for themselves, they can stand up for themselves, and if something's not working they can let me know and they can let other people know. So I just felt that it was a much more equitable situation, and it was much more attractive. There wasn't the kind of stranglehold I felt in teaching that was in sort of formal education in schools. So that was a really very good time, actually, and I met some really interesting people working with them. I'm still friends with them today, and they work all over the world in different places, but we still maintain friendships. And we worked in a way that was really harmonious and met the needs of different students that we were teaching. Again, the same thing happened in further education. They became businesses, became corporate organizations. Again, English and literacy also became much more standardized. And there's nothing wrong with having a curriculum, but it just felt like we were also trying to push them through a system rather than to meet the needs of to live and work in this country. So I did that for a while until what happened was the college offered us £1,000 if we would sign new contracts, new terms and conditions. And I decided I wasn't going to sign the new contract, so I left, and I went overseas to work in Nepal as a volunteer for a VSO, the Voluntary Services Overseas. And so I did that for a couple of years, and I worked in Nepal, in Lamjung district, and that was in a teacher training capacity, teaching primary school teachers how to implement an English curriculum that was much more interactive than the sort of usual copying things from a chalkboard that they were used to. So using reading, writing, speaking, listening skills in a much more interactive way.
So really, in a way, you've always, in one way or another, been around the education system, being an educator.
Yes. Yes, because I believe that through education, it's one of the best ways to achieve an individual's potential, because I don't think there is another way to do that without compromising yourself in some way. Whereas with education, you're able to learn new skills, knowledge, and experience that will enhance your life and other people's lives, hopefully.
So obviously that's kind of your professional background. Yeah, but how about personal life? Are you married or anything else that you would like to say about your personal life?
Okay, so when I was 16, I think there was a conversation that I had with my uncle, my father's brother, and he asked me a question, did I, want to get married? And I casually said, yeah, maybe one day. So he, I think, assumed that meant I was interested in getting married. And so what he did was, through his networks, he sent round a prospective bridegroom and his sister to visit me and my family. And I understood that they'd come for this purpose quite quickly, because it was apparent what their intentions were. And so I made myself quite unattractive to them as a person, as a candidate. And they went away not very impressed with me. And then I said to my parents afterwards that I didn't appreciate them sort of introducing me to someone like that, and that I had no intention of getting married. So that was my first and last encounter with a marriage proposal.
You can tell me if I'm wrong, Julie. Obviously, being a woman in my own family, I can see that being Bangladeshi, being Muslim, and also being in a setting is always difficult. Especially I see in my own current with my own siblings. So what happened after?
That was it. They understood I was serious because I was brought up in a family, Ripon, where I was encouraged to speak my mind. I grew up in a family, especially with my father, I would say. We discussed politics, religion, all sorts of things. I was encouraged to speak my mind and give my opinions and defend my opinions, really. And we wouldn't always agree. So when I made it clear to them that I had no interest in getting an arranged marriage or getting married to anyone, they took it seriously. And I said to them I was going to get educated and support myself. So I wasn't going to need anyone to look after me. And I was going to prove it to them. And that's what I did.
So how did the community respond?
What community?
Obviously, your wider cousins and uncles.
To be honest, I wasn't brought up in a family that gave much importance to what other people thought. We had to justify our actions to ourselves first and foremost. And if we were comfortable doing that, I was taught to not give a shit about what other people think.
Okay, well that's good. No, that's great. No, perfect. So in this case, take me forward a little bit. So you were also involved in political activism. Tell me more about that.
So while I was at school, there was all sorts of things going on politically. When I went to secondary school, Margaret Thatcher came to power in 1979, and that was seen as a terrible event by my family and people who had similar sort of politics. The 80s were a particularly difficult time in Britain. It was a time of, the early 80s, I would say. It wasn't a great time economically for a lot of families. It was quite grim. Towards the end of the 80s, things got better. While I was at college, I got involved in the ANC and other sort of political movements. So I was very aware of, I studied history, sociology, English, and other subjects, and politics. And so I was really aware of what was going on, not just in Britain, but also the rest of the world. So very aware of this sort of social injustice, really, issues that were around. So quite active politically against all sorts of things, and things that also affected us as students. At the time, they were getting rid of grants for people to have, young people to study at university and things like that. And I remember going to demonstrations against that and being, mounted police riding into us in our demonstrations and things like that. So it was quite a politically active time from a very early age, I would say. And that continued into my adulthood, getting involved in local political issues as well. When Derek Beacon was elected a councillor in Millwall, in Tower Hamlet, in the early 90s, women got together and formed a group called Women Unite Against Racism. And we were active in coalition with other organisations, other sort of anti-racist, anti-fascist organisations. And we got rid of him and his party and returned Tower Hamlets to a Labour council. So yes, these things have always been a part of my life from an early age, I would say.
So going forward a little bit, just before lockdown,
Mm.
what was going on day to day on a day-to-day basis in your life way before lockdown? What was life like?
You know what? It was quite frantic. And I don't think I was alone in that. I think lots of people's lives were quite frantic and in a way that was unsustainable. We
In
were
what
doing
way?
lots of things. We were doing lots of things, work wise, personal life wise. You know, it was a very demanding life, I felt. And it was very difficult to sustain that. There was never really time enough to do anything properly. And I
Give me
think,
examples. Give me examples in your life.
well, I was working, I had at least 2 or 3 part-time jobs. I had a very active social life, family life, so there was lots of things going on. And it was exhausting actually to maintain all of these things. Also, I run, the Shadinata Trust, running projects, things like that. It was constantly a treadmill and it was quite unsustainable. So one of the positive things I would say since coronavirus, since the lockdown, is that a lot of the activity has changed and we've had to find different ways to do things, and it's not so frantic and it's not so urgent and it's not so unsustainable.
In what way then did lockdown changed your life?
I only do things that are essential now. So it's essential for me to do work, for example, and support older people with dementia in their homes. It's essential for me to support my mum. It's essential for me to see and maintain friendships with people that are important to me.
Sure.
Now, these things are essential and I enjoy doing them. The downside is that I can't go for a swim. I can't do my yoga classes. I can't do the things that I used to do because, those things aren't open anymore. But I quite enjoy the lack of crowds, the lack of the frantic pace of life that we used to have. So in some ways it's been beneficial, but I'm also aware that there are people who are suffering in this isolation with COVID, with not being able to see people. It's been a real hardship. And it doesn't help that we are unable to support each other in the ways that we used to support each other, by seeing each other, by spending time with each other. That has really had a huge impact.
So have you seen, or has anyone close to you have died or went through severe complications due to the pandemic?
Yes, I know people who have died from it. I've known people who have had COVID. I've had COVID myself. Well, I've had COVID symptoms, and it hasn't been easy. We've lost people in from work, as well as people I've known in the community. So it's happening around us. It's there. Thankfully, I haven't lost anyone close to me, but that doesn't mean it might not happen. The infection rates are high. People are being admitted to hospital on a daily basis. I mean, the threat is still there.
How about your mum? Because I know your mum's quite elderly.
Yes, so she's 73. She's going to have her COVID vaccine tomorrow. We have tried to keep her safe as much as possible during this pandemic by making sure she has what she needs, but she's desperately lonely because she doesn't see anyone. And that is a real hardship. There's no way we could make up for that kind of isolation.
And how do you feel about that?
Terrible. I'm used to seeing her nearly every day. We have to rely on bloody phone calls now. That's rubbish. That's shit, really.
So you remember the first lockdown when we all had a shock to our system?
Yes.
So how would you say the second or third lockdown has been for you?
I think they're just getting worse and worse. Because at least with the first lockdown, it was spring.
Mm-hmm.
We had the summer to look forward to.
Mm-hmm.
We could go out, we can go for walks, we could see people, meet in small groups. There was sunshine, it was bearable. This one is unbearable. Until today, I would say I was depressed since the new year, because
So,
I'm thinking I've got, it didn't feel like there was anything good to look forward to.
so how did you deal with it? How did you cope?
By talking about it, by sharing, how I feel with others. Yeah, that's the only way to deal with it, really. But it's difficult. It's not been easy. It's been horrible. Today, there was a silver lining. I got my COVID vaccine.
So tell me
It
more
was
about COVID vaccination.
okay. So my manager got in touch with us on Friday saying, if you want the vaccine, forward your date of birth and NHS number, and we'll send it to the health service, and they'll let you know when there's an opportunity to get vaccinated. And so this morning I got a call, and they said, "Can you come in today?" I said, "Yes." And they said, "When?" I said, "Now." And they said, "All right then, come in." And that's what I did. And it was really quick, efficient, and very professional, and very safe. And I would recommend it.
Okay, so and which vaccination did you get?
The Pfizer one. So this is the first dose, and then I'll get a second dose, and then that'll be it.
And how does it make you feel?
You know what? This is the first time since New Year that I felt any hope,
Why is that?
because I feel like this is the beginning of getting everyone vaccinated, and then we can make a slow and steady recovery to better health and well-being. There is an end to this insight now. Hopefully people will take it up, and we will get as many people vaccinated as possible, so we can start opening up services and being able to meet each other, to be able to enjoy each other's company, to participate in activities and events that make us feel good as human beings. Because this is a long time to be in this way.
You talked about doing activities together and be human beings. So in terms of kind of reflecting back on just that, what do you think you've learned from the lockdown and the pandemic?
Well, to value the kind of things that I took for granted, like having access to services, to health and leisure, and being able to go to the cinema or an art gallery, or to have a meal, or to go to the pub, or to see friends, to hug someone. All these things have become a lot more precious.